Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Data Insights podcast. I'm Ganesh, CEO, co founder of Conversite. I have a special guest today, Chris Frederick. He is from the University of Notre Dame, local to Indiana, and it's great to have another Indiana colleague in the data space, in the analytics space, sharing the best. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I do think so. I feel like this like Midwest Rust Belt area, we've got a lot we can contribute to data. You don't have to be on the coast, so I'm pretty excited. Pretty
Absolutely.
excited to be
Let's
here.
start with a quick background introduction. I know we know each other, but for our audience, give us your role and how you are into this data role.
Yeah. So I'll just start with my role, and I'll talk a little bit about how I ended out here. So
Hmm.
currently, I teach in the Masters of Data Science program for the University of Notre Dame. And so I've been faculty in this program for 5, 6 years now, and it's been really a privilege and an honor. I get to teach some of the most talented students that I've ever met. Our typical student is like 35 years old or so in that general ballpark. Typically has several years of experience, and so these are people who already have data experience, already have programming experience, right? They know what they want, they know what they need to get, and it just makes for it really challenging, right, to keep up with them and to stay on top of everything since this is
Yeah.
changing so fast. But that is just a joy to teach them. So I really love my job, and I really love helping making it easy for everyone to sort of navigate this data space. So that's pretty much what I do now. How I got here is sort of interesting. I've taken a path that probably a lot of us have taken. I started as a programmer.
Okay.
I programmed for 5 or 10 years. At some point, I started working on an application, and my boss came to me and said, "Hey, are we making any money?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? How do
Mhm.
I figure that out?" And he's like, "Well, could you look at the data?" And I'd never thought about that. I never thought about the fact that the data that we were capturing was just as important as the application.
Mm.
And that sort of prompted me to begin to think about, well, if data is an asset, how do we collect it? How do we treat it? How do we use it to our advantage? And I sort of pivoted from thinking about like, oh, programming is everything that I love, and how do I make the best algorithm and write the best code and use the best design patterns, to how do I make sure that we're really using the data to make the best decisions and driving the business in the right direction? That was fascinating to me. So I sort of pivoted at that point from a programming role. I found myself here at the University of Notre Dame, where my wife went to law school. So I came here, began working in our uh, enterprise data team at the university, doing business intelligence, a lot like you, like report
Okay.
development, right? Been through all of it. Started at the very bottom and worked my way up. Eventually, after a few years, became the manager of our BI team here at the university, founded a data governance program for the university, ran our data driven decision making program with our leadership board, and basically went through that process, created the concept for data ND, which really drives a lot of the decision making that we do here at the university today. And then, of course, through that process, found that I also really loved teaching. I love teaching people how to work with data. And so began adjuncting and decided that that was where I really got the most personal satisfaction, right? Was helping others make the best use of technology, helping others make the best use of data. Whenever that happens, it just brings me a lot of joy. So I sort of moved into a full-time teaching capacity, and I've been doing that ever since. So that's sort of like my career progression. But it just like
Awesome.
everyone, right? It's this sort of epiphany of wow, data, and of course today data is more valuable than ever, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, you're spot on. I think very, very similar, when, obviously I studied mathematics, so all
uh,
numbers. So
yeah.
started with data analytics, but gone of those days where the teams were all focusing on implementing some system to just capture the data, close the books, and no one used that data.
Yeah.
But now, companies like Amazon, companies like this modern digital companies are showing the power of analytics, how you can make money with the data today,
Yeah.
and you can grow and surpass any of your age old real big competitors by just having a better analytics, right? like how these companies are reshaping the retail and in different industries just because they have an advanced analytics ecosystem.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's like a data first mentality at this point.
yeah,
Really pays off thinking about what is the data, how is it captured, what are my sources of variability, how do I control for it, making sure we have quality data. Like that's huge.
yeah.
I know we'll probably talk about governance a little bit here, but that's a really big topic that I feel quite passionate about in order to get the most out of the data. So
Absolutely. I think there is a lot of things like from, you know, as you said, doing programming and start creating reports to even within that data analytics, a lot changed. So before I go to that topic in little detail, I have a question on you said something interesting that your students are, mid-aged, and that means they are working, they have experience in data world, or they are doing like what you did, they are doing some programming, they are interested in data, and they are coming to your class and
it's
learning.
pretty much like a 50-50 split, to be
Okay.
honest. I would say about half of our students come to us and have a lot of math and stats knowledge, but they don't have the programming experience, right? And so they can't quite put data science together yet because they need that math and stats programming and domain knowledge to
Okay.
really excel. So they're coming here for that component of it. The other half, they might have the programming experience, but they don't have the math and stats. So they don't understand how the algorithms work. It makes it really hard to say, hey, which algorithm is going to work given the data that I have? What's the mathematical functions that's driving these algorithms behind the scenes? Why does it behave in this way or not? Right? You can, of course, we could just throw mud at the wall, but we really do need to understand it so we can make sure that we're giving the algorithms the data so that they're going to work well. So, we need to get people in thinking algorithmically, just across the board, and that I think people are realizing like, yeah, I can get so far, but eventually I'm going to really need to sit down and study this so that I can really apply it meaningfully and safely within my organization. So I think that's probably the biggest thing we have. We most of our students already know or have a general idea that, hey, this is super important and here's
Okay.
how I need to be applying it. Yeah, we're typically looking for people who are like that too because we're a very interesting program since we're completely online.
Mm.
We're very cohort focused because University of Notre Dame, that brand, the network, that's a huge component of it. So all of these people, we make sure there's immersions, that we're bringing them together in person, that they are all in the same classes together the whole way through, that they're working together. They build that connection. So it's mainly like networking within themselves, which is huge because I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of our students now actually work together too, of course, because they went to school, they learned together, and they have similar backgrounds and experience. But typically, most people are doing this full time while they're already employed in industry, and
How long,
skill up.
how much time they are spending during this?
Yeah, so I mean, it's 2 semesters in the summer. So it's was it, eight, basically 2 years really.
Okay.
Yeah,
Got
so,
it.
yeah,
So they are coming like a business analyst or a data analyst, and
yeah, like a lot BI analysts, data analysts, programmers, financial analysts, risk analysts, all across the board. Sometimes a lot of military,
oh yeah.
all kinds of people. It's really interesting. A very good cross section of industry, which makes it really fun. Another piece of my job that I love is I teach the capstone programs at the end. And
Mm.
so, of course, we're always working with industry partners there and getting that insight and then seeing all of the other students who have so much professional experience. But of course, everyone has something they're quite good at, right? And
Yeah.
seeing all that come together, it's like getting the best of everything. It's really fun to watch. So,
A lot has changed in this data analytics space. Way back, probably 20 years back, if I think about in my early career, to create a report, I was in a Midwest place and working for a company, and to do a report, it takes like 8 hours. Meaning, somebody used to give a requirement. That's a requirement doc. Then there is a high level design document and low level design document. I can't, like, I still remember one of the documents. They'd say, okay, what are all the columns and what order, which column to be sorting is on,
yeah,
and what filters to be added, right?
seems so simple now.
And then we do a prototype for the report and then develop it and unit test, system testing. Wow. Like, so it's almost a week work versus now, right? Like, you just need to click few buttons in a traditional BI or something like Conversite where you just need to ask a question, right?
Yeah.
Get insight. Like a lot has changed in this technology space. So, is this an opportunity or a struggle for you when you are teaching? Like what you were teaching year back or 2 years back, it's something different now.
No, it's a total opportunity. I mean, I think it's great, right? Nobody wants to spend. I mean, the process you described, right? I mean, there's a lot of good checks and balances in that process,
Yeah,
and at
yeah,
the time, that was really what was required, right? And as we get better, I mean, generative AI's ability to create SQL statements, for example, is good.
yeah.
The tools are making it so that we can get to those insights faster, but the struggle is still really largely the same. Most of the problems that we have when we're trying to answer questions, we'll just use the very classic report, right? Is, do we
Mhm.
have the right data, right? Do we have the right data coming into it? And right, and therefore, do we get the right answers that we're looking for? And if we don't have the right data, it doesn't matter how good we are at reports or how fast that we can make that report generate. If it took us 10 years ago, it took us 8 hours or a week to get that report, and now we can do it in a few hours.
Yes.
However, if the output is still a bad answer because the input data was wrong,
Oh yeah.
we have the same problem. We just got to it faster. So the opportunity is
Yeah.
actually um, helpful, though. It reduces the cycle time it takes to get that insight, right? It reduces the cycle time to failure so that we can say we failed faster, so we can get back into it quicker, so we can fix the data problems so that we can get the answers that we need, right? Or that we can even ask the question in a more specific manner, which is something that I see very commonly. I'm sure you felt that a long time ago. Someone give you this big report requirement, and you're like, first of all, are you even asking the right question? I think this is what you want, but why? What are you really going to do with this?
Yeah.
What really is the nuance of this? That's where the time is. I feel like, and hold on, there's someone's mowing the lawn. Let me shut my window. It's like right outside my window. It's summer here at Notre Dame, so. But I
Oh
mean, I
yeah.
think getting back to that the real problem here, which is like, what is the right way to ask the question? What are you really trying to answer? So an example would be like if someone said to me, well, how many students has Notre Dame had, year over year in this particular degree? You'd think that
Yeah.
would be an easy question to answer, and we can just sum that up and we can write that SQL, right? But the real question is more nuanced than that. Well, what is a student? What counts as
Mm.
taking a class? Is a St.
Okay.
Mary's student who's not enrolled at the university a student in that, or not? Right? Who's counting? What metric are we evaluating that against?
Yeah.
Is a non-degree seeking student who's in the class, is someone auditing that class? Do they count? It becomes really, really nuanced, and different people might have different priorities and different objectives, and so therefore they might have different definitions that they masquerade as the same thing. The number of students in my degree, this number looks bigger than this number, and we get problems where we're comparing apples to oranges. So really understanding like what the question is that we're trying to ask, that's the hard part, right? Getting back to the why, what's driving this? What decision are you going to make with this, right? Are we making a decision about how many people who aren't enrolled in the university are taking our classes? Are we trying to raise that number or lower that number, right? Then those definitions are very material. So it's really hard for our systems to today, even when we get to this generative stuff, to solve those problems. We have to do this really tough work, this governance work of what are the definitions, what do they mean, how do we use them, what are the kinds of questions. And I think that core, that's still core, regardless of how good our technology is at generating SQL statements, right? I don't know if you feel that or not, but
Yeah.
generally that's where most of the problem was. Oh,
Oh,
what report did
absolutely.
you give me? This is completely wrong, right? You're like, well, it's wrong by your definition, but
I,
what is the
yeah.
right one?
I think you said it right. Like the technology is one portion, and then there are two things important. One is the business requirement. Why we need to
Yeah,
do this,
yeah.
and second is this the right data? Like what I
Yeah, the
mentioned.
quality of the data. We have to have quality data, consistent data.
Yeah.
We have to have consistent language that we use as an organization when asking questions, so that we can get consistent answers, so that we can interpret what each other's saying. We have to speak a common language, which oftentimes doesn't happen, especially as the organizations get larger and more complex. Right? All of these things are not so much technology problems as they are governance, process, policy, training, right? Problems.
Yeah.
I think that there are things we can do, especially with generative AI, to sort of help accelerate those processes.
Yeah, I was going to kind of go touch into that. Like now, when I see the students, when we do get a lot of internship applications and all that, like common one, like we are data science AI, right? Lot of buzz around that. Even though there are still a lot of other programmings and
Yeah,
there's a lot of cyber security related stuff.
yeah, the security is
So
huge.
I'm sure your universities offering multiple things, but what do you see? Is there anything changed? Is more attractive now to these courses? What's a trend right
Obviously, data science and AI and the current state of that makes it much more appealing to a lot of people,
now?
right?
Uh-huh.
It's exciting, right?
Yeah,
I think people are, we're at a sort of inflection point in our society where we've sort of now realized that, hey, data is in fact the new oil, that we can do a lot with it, and everyone is wanting to help. People want to make an impact. So if people who want to make an impact are going to be attracted to the fields where they think that impact is,
yeah,
right? That being said, I think that all of these fields, programming, data science, cybersecurity, governance, policy, they're all interrelated. They're all connected. You can't really do this without having all of them and those teams really working together well.
yeah,
So I do think that it's important, even if you are a data scientist, you really do need to think about privacy issues. You need to think about security issues, right? If you're a developer, you need to be thinking about AI issues and governance issues too. I mean, everyone really needs to, have some awareness of what's going on with their colleagues so that we can work together to be successful. So I feel that even as a data scientist or someone graduating, like you should know about all of the other pieces of technology. So how do my models work in a serverless environment? How is this going to be implemented in the application in such a way, right? When I'm training my data, how am I going to make sure that my training, that data is, you know, trusted? I mean, how am I going to deal with these trusted AI issues that are going to come up? Is if I have a reinforcement loop with some human feedback in it, right? Is someone able to seed my models with basically poison data, right? Can they
yeah,
start giving me fake information that I start thinking, oh, is truth, and now my models don't perform as well as they used to? That's a security issue, right? So the people who are in data and information security, they need to be thinking about how do we secure these AI models, and that means they have to know how they work. So we all have to basically work together. So you need to be going out to lunch with your colleagues in information security if you're on the data science team, and you need to be going out to lunch with the programmers, and you guys need to be talking about these issues, right? How do we secure these models at inference time? What safeguards and basically rails do we need to put in front of this so that we ensure that the models are behaving well? How do we make sure that they're not hallucinating too much? It's not just a data science problem. It's
yes,
everybody. It's a team. I don't know if that was really a question you were
yeah,
asking.
yeah.
From my perspective, I don't see them as, I mean, they are distinct in terms of like when you go to LinkedIn, you apply for this job, but really there's a continuum, right? And you might just be in one spot on that continuum where, yes, I need to understand the algorithms more deeply, but I still have to know what's going on to the left and the right of me,
Yes, yes,
in order to build anything that's going to be useful. So absolutely.
yeah. So zooming in, double click on the data science slash the machine learning AI side. Um, so in the learning path, the reason I'm asking this question is also that like you have variety of different level of students,
Yeah.
somebody maybe who can write amazing
Yep.
queries and understand, someone is totally new to this,
Yes.
or someone may can do in like Python and Jupyter notebook type, but it's from the same thing is applicable to any company today,
Yeah.
like where they have, like obviously people used a desktop based
Right.
database, now it's becoming cloud based.
Yep.
A desktop based reporting tool or dashboard based, now it's becoming generic. Like so I think the challenges are how to groom them or motivate them to learn and bridge the gap is a challenge is same. How are you, what is the base for you And what is an add-on? How are you now, end of that 1 year, you need to make everybody into the same
Yeah,
level.
yeah, yeah. No,
It's
exactly.
talent. How are you achieving
So, I mean, first of all, like you have to have a plan, right? So, a lot of that comes through just the curriculum development. So, in our program, we have a very set curriculum
that?
where you don't really pick all your classes because we want to make sure that everyone has a good foundation. So, there's a database class where we go into databases and data architectures and we talk about the
Yeah.
evolution of where everything has gone, all the way from relational normalization, data warehousing classically, data lakes, why we do it, distributed compute, how we process large data sets, all the way model, time, inference, right, Spark, everything. All of that so that you have a big idea. You need to understand that landscape regardless of where you are. We've had people come in who are experts in that, but everyone's always going to learn something. So I think the key thing is that you really have to understand and think critically about how technology has evolved and the reasons behind the implementations of the technology so that you can think, because it's going to keep changing. It's going to be, there's going to be something new tomorrow. Like we were all cloud, 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 cloud. And now
Yeah.
suddenly, right? Oh, wait a minute. Nobody wants to rent A100s in the cloud. Like maybe some stuff is coming back on premise, right? Um,
Yes.
so it's really interesting in terms of we don't know where it's going to go. So you have to be able to understand the benefits and the trade-offs. So really focusing on the why. Why did we normalize? Why did we denormalize when we got back to data warehousing?
Yes.
Why did we build a data lake? What caused us to decide that lake houses were a good idea? Right? What caused us to invent columnar storage, right? Thinking through all of the whys behind that I think is foundational. And getting people to think critically like that about why things happen, that's how you get them interested in it, right?
Got it.
So do that across all of the different disciplines that are core to that. So if you're in data science, why does this algorithm work? Why did we invent smoke? Right? Why are we dealing with bias in our in our data or you know you've got to really think about the why behind it. And I think that's the key, right? So when you get done with this, yes, you're going to have learned some technologies, but you're really going to also have learned the reasons that those were invented, which is going to help you to be able to learn as it changes. Because we know this is true. We're never going to be done learning. But we've both been in this career for so long,
Yes.
and we've always been sort of forced, really, to learn. Like when we started, serverless wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it is. So when do we use the server? When don't we use the server? We have many more choices to make today than we did a long time ago. So
What changes have you seen in the last 1 year with Gen AI coming in, which could automate a lot of things as well as, um, you know, potentially is this a threat to some people? Now it's all the reports are going to be auto-generated now.
uh, yeah,
How
well,
do you see, how do you see that?
I think we are. I mean, this is my personal opinion, but I feel like we are kind of top peak of the hype cycle right now. I think
Yes.
it's remarkable what the large language models are able to do, and it's so remarkable that you might be overconfident in terms of
Yeah.
how well that they can work. And so I think that the pendulum will swing from, oh, it's going to solve all of our problems, to, wait a minute, these are the ones that it actually is solving, right? And it will find its balance, right? And
Yeah.
eventually will be a tool that will work just like anything. We're probably going to overstep into it initially, and then there will be many failed projects, and we'll kind of find our way back to a happy balance. So I think that's sort of where we are just right now today. That being said, I do feel like the larger challenges are going to come from, you know, how do I, around the governance of this, right? Really, how do I ensure that I have my AI aligns with my goals? So AI alignment is going to be a big topic that we're going to hear a lot about coming up. So if my goal is to have an AI system that can generate code, right, and that code is secure and functional, how do I make sure that that's the case? How do I make sure that the code that's generated doesn't have an SQL injection attack in it, right? These are much more complicated and difficult questions that I think we're really sort of at the beginning of. We can do a lot, but can we do it really well and in a way that businesses are willing to put money, reputation, risk on the line for? So
Got
I think as what we'll find is that the AI use cases are going to accelerate in the areas initially where the risk is lower, and there'll be more time in governance when the risk is higher, right? So you and I would probably feel very comfortable using AI to help us do certain things like Grammarly already does with writing our emails, right?
Yes.
Fairly low risk. We're going to be less interested in having the AI replace our doctor when we go into the doctor and our primary care physician is a chatbot. We're not going to feel as confident, right? Um,
Yes.
so I think that the risk is going to be there. And again, that comes down to governance, right? Governance is always trying to help us manage risk. Is there institutional risk, financial risk, right? Operational risk from how we use this data.
Yeah.
So I think that's the case. And
So when from education perspective or awareness perspective, when you talk to these new
yes,
students, do you see a sense of urgency to learn new, or do they see there is a threat? How
no,
are they
no.
perceiving?
Everyone is very eager. I
Okay.
mean, everyone who's in our program, I think, is trying to learn, right? So we're naturally going to be biased towards this, and I would say that most people, innovation is exciting, right?
Yeah.
And I've always sort of had this idea of like you get one innovation token a year. Like if I was in my job in a corporate America, I would say you get one innovation token a year. You can spend this on one fancy new tool because it is constantly changing. But people are going to chase innovation. They're going to chase something that's shiny, new, and exciting. And I think that the reality is that we can do that. So I have a demonstration for large language models that I do where I have an agent-based thing that generates these marketing emails in mass for all of our customers based on their prior purchases, and it all looks
Yeah.
great and it's all shiny. And I get to the end, and everyone's like, "Wow, this is cool." And I say, "Okay, so would you send those emails?" Right? And people will
Yeah.
pause and they'll say, "Wait a minute, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't send them." Right? And
Yeah.
and then really investigate. Well, what's the reason that you wouldn't send them? Right? Is it because you were having emails that were being written that look like they were handwritten by a human, but they're not, so they're not genuine? Is there a risk to that? Right? And does that risk change depending on your company and how your company operates? So if I am, a company that's very buttoned up and I'm generating these and it gets out that these are generated, not handwritten, that's going to be reputational impact potentially. But if I'm Wendy's and I'm known for making snark comments and I can do whatever I want, Wendy's can be like, yeah, I wrote snarky emails with Gen AI and sent them to you, and people will think that's fun, right? So the alignment is the key, right? AI. The word alignment is interesting because you want to make sure that it works well for what your goals of your organization are, and so you kind of have to map what your goals are, how you feel about things to how your AI systems work. That's going to really have a big impact on this. It's going to be different for everybody. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's interesting, which really to me comes back to the concept of data governance and making sure that you have that. If you have a chief data officer or someone who's helping to set that policy and then let that drive through the rest of the organization, I feel like that's how companies are going to be able to get ahead using this. I think companies who don't put a lot of emphasis on the governance side of this and just shoot forward because it's shiny and they build the chatbot and they release it, they're the ones you're going to hear about in the news where the chatbot, negotiated a lower house price than possible because somebody was able to, convince it to say, oh, yes to something when it should have said no.
I share the same sentiment from working with all these large customers, working with them, where I see a huge opportunity. Like, give you a couple of examples, even from, in Indiana, companies like 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, or smaller companies now are able to, do demand forecasting
Yeah.
and, generate tons of reports and dashboards. And otherwise, this is typically done only in big companies.
Yeah.
They have data scientists, they have data analysts, they have, different tools, a data integration tool, there's analytics tool, there is a LLM, a lot of tools. Now it's all coming easy and affordable, right? A lot more, right? So I see this is going to ma- bring a level playing field. Like now, a small company in Indiana can have a very similar capability without spending $1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
It's something
I,
amazing.
I
Yeah.
do think it's possible, right? I think that that is really the case. And I think that those smaller companies that take the care to make sure that they're recording their data really well are going to do quite well with that.
Yes.
Um, I think that there's opportunities still to, and I mean, this is maybe you have experience doing this, but if of course you have some data and people are hand entering it, and someone enters a few extra zeros, this is really going to cause some problems with your forecasting, right? And how are these tools that auto generate this supposed to recognize the difference between this is true data or not? So, if there are agents that are trained just like we're trained to do EDA that can do that and bring these issues up and let them know there might be quality issues, like what are the ways that we can help automate some of the steps that are required to make sure that the data that's being used to generate the answers and the predictions is still valid? That's a piece that's really exciting to me. I definitely think that a lot of these businesses are going to be able to do a lot with it. And I think the ones that are going to get the best value are the ones that take the best care of their data. It's almost like the you know the more you treat data as an asset, the more return you can get. And so that would be my advice to especially all those mid-range companies is make sure you take care of that data well. If you've purchased a company and you've got three, this is what I saw all the time when dealing with companies. Company acquires this company, the company acquires that company, and now I've got three data sets that represent sales, but they're not in any way speaking the same language, right? How does that quality issue get corrected so that you can properly forecast, or you just forecast per unit, which could work too. But if you're trying to look across all of that business, it can become quite challenging. So those are the problems that I still see sort of hindering the successful adoption of some of this stuff. But the more we focus on what's the quality of the data that I'm inputting into these models, the easier it is for us to say, yeah, all right, we can generate forecasts, we can generate these reports, we can answer these questions, and to do so accurately in ways that the customers are driving value from. So my risk for this, what I feel that the risk is for the sort of automation of this is that the quality of the data has to
Yes.
also be good in order for it to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's, as you rightly mentioned, end of the day, all these new Gen A and all those are consumption. If the foundation is not
Correct.
there, you have a problem.
Yeah. So there is this notion still like that we have to take care of our data, that we have to provide good data so that we can get good results. And I think that piece is fundamentally going to be critical. So having people who are still focused on that, I think, is important. But you're right; it's not going to take the team that it used to take us. Like we had to have.
Yes.
I did business objects a long time ago. I did a lot of business objects back in my day, and that took a lot of people. You had to have in order to generate that one report. And I don't think that we need that
Yes.
level anymore. So it's going to bring costs down. It's going to make things more affordable for sure.
Yeah.
I'm
The
excited.
foundation is needed, and then this advanced tools, and in between, making sure that the data governance and
Yeah,
the security is really, really key.
yeah,
It's taken
yeah,
care.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, why are we doing this, right?
Yeah.
We're not doing it to build reports. I can build 1,000 reports if no one looks at them. I've added no value, right?
Yes.
That was something I really disliked about my original job when I was, hey, fresh, just getting started in my career. And they're like, build these reports, and I built them. And then I'm like, and you told me to build it, but no one ever looked at it, right?
Mhm.
Why did I build it? What is the action that the company's going to take? I think the most insightful data projects are the ones driven by really clear questions of interest, right? Where there's an action that can take place that can
Yeah.
positively impact the business. So I know it can be hard getting people to do that. These projects that you and I have probably both been on, these projects where they're like, well, what do you do? No, well, why don't you just get all the data and look at it and tell me what's interesting? Okay, like, but what are you going to do with it? We can do that, uh, but it's kind of, in my mind, the opposite way that we want to approach this, right? What's the problems that are facing the business, and what data would help us solve those
Yeah.
problems? How do we get that ingested into the platform? Then you're going to get that ROI that people are looking for. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time doing stuff that didn't have any value.
In fact, that's where like the analyst and then companies like us, Conversite, what we are building is not business intelligence, a decision
Yeah,
intelligence,
decisions.
right? So where, we all started with reports, then we founded dashboards of put all the reports in
Yeah,
one.
right. Of course. Yeah,
Then,
make it easy.
okay, why do we need to run reports? And we got insights like alerts, proactive insights.
Yeah,
Now, why do I even need that? Because I need to take an action. I read somewhere 85% of the time the reports analytics used to justify the decision which they already made
yeah,
instead of other way
yeah.
around,
The other way
right?
around. Like you want to know, like, hey, is my customer likely to churn before they churn?
Yeah,
Right? It doesn't do me any good if they've already left. I mean, I should have done this for you. I'm sorry I didn't. Right? How can we do that? How can we help people?
yes.
Before it's too late. That's the key. So I just totally agree, and I think that there's so many applications of this. I mean, across cities, across there's so much good that can come from this, right? I mean, you know, just looking at like large industries like cities, of course, right? All the decisions that cities make to support our citizens, right? Can we make better decisions so that we can help people, right, live better and more productive lives? Of course we can, right? And we have so much data that we're collecting. We have so many ways we can identify people who are at risk earlier, so many ways we can help them. I just feel like that using data for good is going to be so important as we go forward. So yeah, I think this can happen. I mean, and I'm glad that we're not having to build these reports and just think about the order of the columns anymore. That was chaos. That was a bad time.
Yeah. So a lot of things happening in data analytics, and you have seen everything. Like, so what are you most excited about right now? And what do you think there are still things we need to achieve in data analytics?
So I think I have a lot of things that I'm most excited about right now. um,
Not just NAI,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, of course, generative AI is exciting. I'll try to not use generative AI, and because I think that one is largely covered. Um, I think that the biggest thing that I see is that I am excited about, and that I think generative AI sort of did was it's almost like another revolution for data, right?
Yeah.
It's really opened people's eyes to the fact that hey, data is valuable, and not just so much anymore in terms of like static reports like that we used to have, but that it's achievable for us to produce insights that are actionable beforehand. So I really am actually most excited about the application of it, right? I
Yeah.
think, back in the early 2000s, we had a lot of data projects that failed, right? And then we had Hadoop and the promise of big data. And I think a lot of that kind of failed because we didn't know what to do with it, right? Yes, we built all these large databases, but then we didn't use them, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what is exciting now is that we have the sort of we're at the correct moment in time where we have the hardware that's necessary to process at scale. We've done enough with the cloud. So the cloud, GPUs, right? There's a confluence of various factors that are all coming to pass right now for the very first time where we actually have the capability to do things at scale that we just previously didn't have the ability to do.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what's exciting. Like, because we have so many ways that we can do this. I mean, we can basically take clusters of machines and train on them as if they were one machine. That's incredible, right?
Yes.
When
Yeah.
when I was a kid, we didn't have anything like that, right? I mean, I remember token ring networks, were a big deal. Like, I mean, this was, um, you know, I think that we're going to see a lot of innovation because we now have the ability to do compute at scale, to do storage at scale, right? With distributed storage and distributed compute, both of those things were big, um, right? And now we have the ability to do, of course, distributed, GPUs and things like that as well. So I just feel like the future is very bright in terms of our ability to process large scale data sets and to do so very interestingly. So I know LLMs, of course, that's like
Awesome.
that was almost like the easiest use case out of the gate. We have a
Yes.
lot of text data, so that one makes sense. So I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I would.
I think,
Oh yeah, I would
yeah.
say that the other thing that has been really fun is the rise of unstructured data,
Oh, yeah.
right? So, and then the combination of structured data and unstructured data to do things. I don't think that we've really tapped into that as much as we can right now. Um, so I think that we'll probably start to see
Yeah.
a lot more with this. You know, the images, the text, the sound, the media, and plus all of the other information that we have about people. You know, to bring all that together to make better decisions. That's going to come. It used to be right. We just discarded that image, product images, or we just put them on the web page. But
Oh, yes.
now they can actually be part of our decision pipeline in terms of if we're offering the right products. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the use cases have just started coming in one or two, especially in customer success. For example, you're working with a pharma company where they have the customers can come and ask a question about the status of the order, or
yeah,
a process to return, process to create an account. Like sometimes structured, sometimes
yeah,
unstructured. Sometimes they ask for a document, like, hey, get me the invoice for this, right? So this can be done, but it's all just scratching the
yeah.
surface. There is a lot more use cases
It
possible.
is, and I feel like I mean, embeddings, right? Of course, this
Yes,
is huge, right? Our ability to represent this unstructured data, in a structured way that's consistent,
yes,
where we can perform mathematical operations against it. So, semantic search, all of these things, vector databases. I mean, this is all stuff that's just basically brand new. I mean, our database
yes,
vendors are still like, hey, we just added vector indexes to our
yeah,
databases. Like this stuff is just happening, right?
happening. Yeah,
Um, so I think that what that means is that there's a ton of innovation that gets to happen in the products and services that we develop for our consumers that are going to get to use this technology. And, all the companies are really at the very front end of just scratching what they can do with this. So I'm really excited to see what all of people like you, right, are going to do with all of these new tools that we have access to now at really, you know, I would say like consumer level. I mean, it's no longer just like the big companies who have access to this stuff. It used to just be,
yes,
you had to be a Google, you would have it maybe, but now we can all do semantic search across all of our document databases, and we can put together new experiences for people that previously were just not thinkable. So I think this is really really excited, and of course, large language models will play a role in that. I can't really get away from how important that's going to be in that process, and just making it more accessible for everybody. I would add, and maybe you can tell me what you think about this. Um, you know, one thing that I've been just playing around in my head with is that in the end of the day, will the uh, ability for us to have generative AI actually create a problem where we have people who are experts who are already using it get better, and we have people who aren't quite experts and don't have all the foundational training actually get worse because of their dependence on the LLMs, because without it they can't make any decisions. So is it actually going to create a wider gulf between the level of our employees and staff, if that makes sense?
yeah, absolutely.
Right, like if you have a programmer who is very very new and they spent their entire time just programming with Gen AI, and I have an experienced programmer who's using Gen AI, I feel like that gap between them is actually just going to get wider, and
Yes,
that
yes.
that may present some problems for people who can afford to have that person who has that experience plus the Gen AI, and the one who is just dependent upon, hey, I can only do what Gen AI can do.
But though it's basically the thinking, who's the thinker versus doers, like you still need to think and ask the right way,
Yeah,
right? So absolutely. Like opportunities in data is endless. I think a podcast like this and Q&A in a data is also endless. Like I think I'm sure
yeah,
we'll have topics to talk for next 2 hours maybe,
yeah,
but we want to be really keep it short. So I'm super excited with this podcast. Like I think you have covered some of the key topics, and you are doing not just doing for a company, rather you are creating a lot more talent in India now, which is going to really shape up our future of data analytics here. So I just wanted to ask you one last question from like talent retention perspective. And while you are creating a lot of this talent, what are they excited? Are they looking to go work for Silicon Valley companies? Are they ready to work here in industrial manufacturing and make it happen?
So I think what is exciting people is when they feel like they have impact and autonomy, right? They don't. What I'm discovering and watching all these students go and apply for jobs is that most people aren't really saying like, oh, I need to work for like a Google, or oh, I want to work for a small business. They're saying,
Okay.
I want to work for someplace where I have an impact. So I think if you put people in
Sure.
roles where they have impact, they feel fulfillment, and then they're more likely to stay. Right. So
That's
the
right.
key thing that I'm seeing, and regardless, because we work with, when we do our capstone projects, we try to have like little companies and big companies. And at the very beginning, when everyone gets to sign their companies, sometimes people will be like, oh, wait a minute, I got this little company and I got this big company. But at the very end, they're like, wow, what a difference I was able to make.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's easier to make that big difference in a smaller company, right? Because the opportunity is bigger than a larger company because the politics get in the way, right? So I think that when students come in, a lot of them have a bias towards technology. I want to write in Python. That's what my job. I want that to be, right? Someplace that uses Python. And I think when they leave, they realize I want to have an impact. And I think that's the biggest factor, right? People want to feel fulfilled, and they want to know that they have the ability to help shape what that fulfillment looks like. That's the autonomy piece, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
how do you bring both those things into the workplace? I think that's the key.
Yeah. That is one reason why, while we always debate like what's the right place to keep this company growing from AI, we said, okay, our customers are right here, so let's stay here and build here.
Yeah,
Of course, the talent is not easy,
no.
but we decided to be here, right?
Well, I
So
will
yeah.
say on the talent and where the talent's moving, and my anecdotal information is that the talent is moving here.
Mm.
We've had a number of students start in the West Coast and move to the Midwest.
Wow,
Um,
nice.
yeah,
Mm.
so we absolutely see that. I think that there's a number of socioeconomic factors, cost of living factors
Oh
that are
yes.
causing this. I think that your company, Notre Dame, the Midwest, is in a good spot right now in time, right? We have a relatively low cost of living versus many of the coasts, right? We have a lot of really great research universities, IU, Purdue, Notre Dame. There's tons of great research and innovation happening in this region. And then coupled on top of that with really great companies like yourselves. I mean, the whole like tech center, Tech 16 is what it's called, or 16 Tech, I believe. Yeah,
16.
with 16 Tech and everything that's going on in India, there's so much growth.
Yes.
It's a really exciting place to be. It almost feels like the beginning of another Silicon Valley. So,
Oh yeah.
I do feel strongly. If somebody were to ask my personal opinion, should I go to Silicon Valley or should I come to the Midwest? Right,
Yeah.
come to a town and work there. Whether you're working in Indy or South Bend or wherever, right? There is technology and innovation happening, right? Especially around these university hubs, right? Tons of growth. So I am really excited for the future of tech in the Midwest.
Absolutely. Chris, thank you so much for sharing your views and what you are seeing students. And it's really glad that, to hear that we are going to have a lot more talent locally here and because of you. So
Great.
thank you so much.
Yeah, well, hopefully they come and work for you, right? So thank
Yeah,
you. I
looking
mean,
forward.
that's the dream, right? So,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
all right. Well,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Ganesh.
Yeah. You have a nice rest of the day.
Take
Yeah.
care.